Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with Mystic Gen Mara, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And tonight is the Occult and Crochet series that I've been doing. At the moment I haven't added anything to any of my crochet projects, so not much to talk about there, unfortunately. But I do want to bring forward the gentleman that we're speaking of, and what my plan is to talk about the other founder of this particular group and then go over the foundations of the group, kind of its principles and stuff like that in the coming month. So tonight I plan on talking about, oops, missed something, just one second. And hopefully everything is flowing smoothly on YouTube. It looks like it is on Odyssey right now, so we'll see how this works. If not, I may start doing something a little bit different with the videos versus live streams. Haven't decided yet. But we are going to talk about William Robert Woodman. I've mentioned this gentleman before, but it was quite a while ago, honestly, and I referenced him only in passing when I introduced you to another member of this particular group, and that was S.L. McGregor Mathers. Quite an interesting character all on his own, but William Robert Woodman, who I'll reference him by Woodman because that's the easiest way, and you'll find out why here in a little bit. Going forward, was one of the three founders of the original Golden Dawn, the one that proceeded through a very specific lineage and then birthed the others. And I will say that not all of the other ones are truly traceable back to this particular group, and I'll get into that later, but from my reference, there's really only one Golden Dawn group out there now, but we won't get into the politics of that, and it's not like mystical politics. So let's take a little dive into who this gentleman was in life and how he became associated with the Golden Dawn. And I will say, unfortunately, there's not a lot of references or information about him. Everything that I found tracked back to a pretty cut and dried view of his life. Details as far as spouses, parents, any of that, for some strange reason, has been lost to history. At least I couldn't find it, and it could be partly who he was associated with during his life. And so, but what we do know is that Woodman was born in England in or around the year 1828. So we're going in the way back machine, back into that time when the Great Awakening of spiritual revolution was really occurring. But this gentleman was in England and had, at this time, had pretty much nothing to do with what was going on in the States at the same time in Upper New York State. Anyway, Woodman pursued his interests in healing through his younger life, and in 1851 became a licensed surgeon. And in England, you had to actually go through a classwork and then a licensure board and be certified even to consider practicing. And a lot like it is today, but you wouldn't think, considering some of the tactics they used to use, that there was a license that went along with it. But this was an important thing for him because it allowed him to be a surgeon in Napoleon III's coup, and I couldn't figure out which one because he had two of them around the same time as Woodman was going through his process. And Napoleon III is not Napoleon Bonaparte, just so we're clear. France likes that name, and apparently having coups and riots and uprisings was a big thing, still is, but that's a whole nother topic. Anyway, Woodman set up his practice in Stoke Newington and became a police surgeon as well. So he wasn't just a medical surgeon, he was a police surgeon. And I had no idea what this was, to be 100% honest with you. Police surgeon sounds like, so you work for the police, being a doctor. That's kind of true. We would call him today a forensic examiner or a forensic doctor. He would show up to crime scenes, he would do autopsies, things like that, specifically for law enforcement. So that was, for the time, pretty impressive. And if you've ever seen the old movie, sorry, this is totally off topic. If you ever watched the movie Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp, that's kind of the police surgeon concept, was Johnny Depp's original character, or when he's still in London. No, New England, sorry. But it's just that whole, like, I'm a science nerd and I want to pick apart the body and figure out what was going on. That's kind of what he's doing with less antics, is what I'm guessing. Woodman was an interesting person just in general, but one thing I found particularly interesting, at least to me, considering his day job and his police work, he was an avid gardener, which to me is quite the contrast to the messy practice of medicine and forensics that he performed by day. And what I did find interesting, and I found this referenced multiple places, is he became so prominent in horticulture for his day that he became well known and very well respected in horticultural circles, to the point that after his death, the Royal Horticultural Society, there's a mouthful, placed a memorial at his grave in Willesden. I'm probably murdering that name, but because he contributed so much and he was so avid with it and so detail oriented, was one of the big ones. Like, when he would work on building a strain of something, he had records and dates and what was crossed and when. I mean, amazing records from what I could what I was reading. Woodman had a small inheritance that was left to him with property in Exeter. And this is where he would eventually retire in 1871. Retire from medical work. But he didn't stay in Exeter for long, because around 1887 he ended up back in London. And that's kind of background for him. That's like the basics of his more mundane life. So we're here for the mystical and the magical, so here we go. And when I'm using the term magic through the rest of this article, or this article, I wrote an article, is basically what happened here. Through the rest of this video, I'm using magic with a K. We're not talking about illusionary magic, M-A-G-I-C, Magic the Gathering, things like that. We're talking about the deep magic, the magic of psychology, the magic and mysticism of creating change within the world, that type of magic. It's very specific in ceremonial circles, and like I said, we'll talk about this when I talk about the Golden Dawn and some other groups. But they add the K to differentiate it from the stage magician. These people work in the shadows, and it's a lot more intense, we'll just put it that way. So, moving forward. Dr. Woodman was a Freemason in the United Grand Lodge of England, which is the governing body for Freemasons within England. He achieved the rank of Grand Sword Bearer within this lodge, and this position basically carries the sword of the state in the procession hall. He's kind of the right-hand man of the Grand Master, is what I was finding out. There's information out there, but as typical Masonic information is, it's cloaked a little bit, so it sounds kind of like he's next in line if something were to happen with the duly elected Grand Master, but he's not technically an elected position, he's an appointed position. He holds the sword for the leader of the lodge, and it seems to be, like I said, pretty important, but the way it's worded is a little unclear as to what his official position was. It appears that he's next in line if the current one, something happens and is no longer able to fulfill his duties. So part of that is in 1867, so we're going back just a little ways before his retirement. Dr. Woodman was admitted to the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia. In less Latin terms, English, that's what I normally speak. This is the Rosicrucian Society of England, and Rosicrucians are an interesting group as well. But interestingly for him, he was only initiated 2 years or so into this particular lodge's existence. This lodge is believed to be the inspiration for the later lodge that he designed with Mathers and Westcott, which was the Golden Dawn. At least the degrees that he proposed are attributed to this particular lodge. This lodge claims a direct lineage from the ancient Rosicrucian Brotherhood, but to be brutally honest with you, they don't have viable proof. They claim they do, but when asked to provide said justification, mysteriously, oh, it's in the next lodge over, or whatever. So there's that. But I will go into a deeper dive on the Order of the Rosy Cross, which is Rosicrucianism, at a later time. But he was associated with A, the Masons, and B, the Rosicrucians, which are very much tied to secret societies, mysticism, and occult, i.e. secret knowledge. So he's got quite the background building him up so far. According to what I could find, he also was tied to several other minor occult lodges throughout England, but none of them were named specifically because, in my opinion, because I couldn't find any references to what other lodges there were, it's because those lodges were shortly defunct. Like, they popped up, had their heyday, and then disappeared because people got bored. And that happens. But he has a very metaphysical, occult, magical background, is where we're going with this. So we'll hop back to Dr. Woodman. And I'm using the term doctor because he actually was a medical MD for the day, which is pretty cool, actually. Because scientific mind, occult knowledge, normally don't think of them together, but with this particular person, he was very much into both because he saw them as both ways to grow and expand as humans. So there's that. After the death of one of the leaders of the Societe Rosicruciana, Woodman became the supreme magus. Depends on who you talk to. Which basically means he's the chief of that order. He's the leader of it. Woodman was good at ordering and expanding this particular lodge, and he brought its influence to North America primarily, but also there's references to South America as well, so that's pretty impressive. And because of his leadership, he was able to branch it all the way to starting one of the first Rosicrucian-style lodges in Australia as well. So under his leadership, the mystical practice of Kabbalah was also added to this particular flavor of Rosicrucianism, because Kabbalah is a Jewish form of mysticism, goes back to Babylon, but we'll go into that later. But it's a very intense practice of spiritual development. People who've practiced the occult version of it, not the hippie woo-woo Hollywood version, but the actual version of it, will tell you that it is going to transform you because it gives you a different view of the universe. And I'm not kidding. I spent 4 years studying it, and let's just say it changes how you look at everything, including yourself. But that kind of intense training was added into the Rosicrucian community during Dr. Woodman's time as leader. Dr. Woodman was also interested in other metaphysical practices which influenced the lodges that he was involved in. These interests involved, as I spoke before, the Kabbalah, Hebrew language, which in a lot of occult circles is one of the power languages, and in Hebrew philosophy as well, going back through not just the canon Bible, but the Torah, the Talmud, and multiple of the apocryphal texts as well. He also brought in Plato's philosophy, which was scientific and mystic, which is fascinating. And I've only looked a little bit into Plato, but what I have so far is there's a reason that he tends to be associated with this type of groups. He also was a very big proponent of Egyptology and the deities associated with that. he had a very broad range of interests. He was also considered a scholar of Hermetic study. And Hermeticism and the Kabbalion are two things that people do not fully understand in today's culture. They think, oh, well, it's this. We'll go into that, like I said, but that one's probably going to be a really long episode, or might break it into two, because Hermeticism, it's hard to define, but when you start to delve into it, all of a sudden things open up and it goes everywhere. But he tied all of this into these different lodges he was associated with to differing degrees. But from my research, in the order... sorry, I totally wrote that entire sentence with 0 punctuation, so let me double check what I had here. Okay, so from my research, comma, in the order of the Golden Dawn, the elder Dr. Woodman, oh no, this was before Golden Dawn, sorry, Rosicrucianism. I am off tonight, I apologize. In the Rosicrucian order, Dr. Woodman was the older person of the group, and that's where he met William Wynne Westcott and Samuel L. Mathers, before he had the McGregor. These three people in particular designed and developed the order of the very first Golden Dawn. This lodge was focused on spiritual development and magical practices. And as I spoke with S.L. Mathers, these are one and the same. You cannot develop magical practice, magical abilities, without a spiritual development. You cannot develop spiritually unless you understand metaphysics. That was a basis for Woodman and Mathers and Westcott to a point, and I'll get into that later, but he wasn't quite on the same page as these particular two are. Mathers was the youngest of the three, and Woodman was approximately 20 years older than Westcott. And now you know why I'm using last names, because William Woodman, William Westcott, it's just easier to go with last names. So, but Woodman was the elder by about 20 years from what I could see. Westcott was next, and then Mathers was like a year or two younger from what I can find than Westcott. So we're all within a 25-year period, give or take. It appears that the young Westcott and Mathers actually sought out the elder doctor to guide them into deeper magical practices. They were young, they thought they knew everything, they wanted power basically, and Woodman is like, I can show you, but we're going to learn how to control yourselves, control you, as well as the spiritual world. It was believed that Dr. Woodman added an air of respectability to the foundation of the future Golden Dawn. And from how I view him and how I've come to view him over the years, I think that his mind is what grounded the other two, and I'll go into my opinion on that a little bit later. In 1887, Woodman was granted the title of Exempt Adept, or Adeptus Exemptus, 7 equals 4. There's other letters and numbers that go around that, but we'll start there, which is approximately level 9 in the 12 level pattern, which was the original blueprint for the Golden Dawn. And this was the first iteration of the Golden Dawn that we're talking about with this level. All three of them got the same level of title, which is Exempt Adept, Adeptus Exemptus, or 7 equals 4. They're all kind of the same position. There we go. In this version, it was more of a philosophical in the outer order. And he was more meditation, learning yoga, practices like this. Then magic and mysticism were added and infused into the second order. So you have an outer order, a lot like the Masons do, the inner order, which was the second order, and eventually there would be a third high level order that held the deepest secrets, did the higher magics. Woodman is thought to have influenced this lodge into the Kabbalah mystical practices. And when you look at how the lodges are set up, you have like the lower three, lower four, Sephira are part of the outer lodge, the middle three are the inner lodge, and then the secret order is the highest aspect of it, and that's where you get your third order. They're extreme adepts, and there's some other names that go along with that, which this is kind of something that bugs me a little bit, and I don't know why it does. In this order, the finality of the Golden Dawn, it is technically 10 levels. It's broken down as 12, but the first 2 or 3 levels are initiate levels, and they're technically considered one level. You still hold the same title and position through those first 3 levels, and then you get moved into the upper aspects of it and really start to grow. But here's the part that is odd to me. Not one of the 3 founders, Woodman, Westcott, or Mathers, ever achieved the highest level according to what I have found. The highest level, which would be associated with Kiefer in the Kabbalah, is the level of Ipsissimus. Love that word. And from what I have read, Aleister Crowley was one of the very first or very few to have ever achieved that aspect of the original order. If you know of anyone else during this time period, and I am going to dig deeper into this because it's confusing to me, that ever achieved the level of Ipsissimus from 1890 to 1925-ish, please comment below and let me know, because I can't find anyone. Crowley's the biggest name that's been associated with it. I just still can't quite understand how the founders of a lodge never achieved, at least not that I have found, the highest level of the order that they developed, including the exercises and practices of Ipsissimus, but never achieved. Like I said, if you guys are watching, know of someone, let me know, because I do plan on going into a deeper dive into the Golden Dawn this next month of July, and we'll talk about it then. I just find it interesting. Anyway, Dr. Woodman was one of the triad of the founders, obviously, but unfortunately, he would not be able to fulfill a role in stabilizing the order into its second iteration, and the basic foundation of future Golden Dawn orders. What I find odd is that Westcott and Mathers never appointed a third to take Dr. Woodman's position within the order. And I think this is what led to the first fracture within the order. Now, this is again my opinion here, and I am prefacing it with this information because I don't want to misconstrue things. In my opinion, I feel that Woodman was the balance of the over-controlling Westcott and the hyper-magical Mathers. I think he was the cool head between these two particular hotheads. I respect Mathers in a very deep way because his mystical knowledge and his ability to take complex magical theory and make it into something practical and practicable were pretty much without equal. Even Crowley could not do what Mathers had been able to. Crowley liked to have everything complex and secret and no one could figure it out. But Mathers was trying to make it so that you could understand these deeper concepts and practice them in a way that would help you spiritually grow, but also work the magic. And Westcott had really great ideas, but from multiple times that I've went over this particular group of 3 people, Woodman was the glue that held these two together and helped them create the fascinating system, philosophy, and powerful magic of the Golden Dawn. Westcott had a lot of drive, which is great, but his drive was a drive more rooted in power from what I have seen. Mathers wanted magic, Woodman wanted spiritual development. The three together made a powerful ally group. But when you take one out, especially the cool-headed one, it kind of exploded. And that's, like I said, one of the first fractures in the Golden Dawn. And as I spoke earlier, when I say magic, I'm talking magic with a K. It's not the illusionary stuff. It's creating change in accordance to will, according to Crowley. But that's where that was going. But here's the reason that he could not be an active participant in further order work. Dr. William Robert Woodman died in December of 1891 at the rather young age of 63 of a minor illness, it is said, and a poor health. So he just wasn't taking care of himself like he should have. A small footnote outside the Golden Dawn. This doesn't apply to the Golden Dawn. This is a footnote for him outside of that. In his will, he appointed Westcott, which is weird, as his successor to the leadership of the Societas Rosicruciana. So the Rosicrucian Society, he gave the control to Westcott, because I think he saw Westcott's drive would actually propel it forward, but unfortunately that also, like I said, led to a little bit of the original downfall of the Golden Dawn. Not fully, but it started the disintegration of the original order. Also, Woodman left part of his library to that particular society, and it's because of his ties to Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry that I think a lot has been hidden about him. I fully believe there would be more if you were in one of those groups, and being able to go through some of the histories within, because they have a lot of stuff that's been published within their group that's not made public. I know that sounds weird in the days of the internet, but these particular orders might publish something, but it never sees the internet. And it is handed from the person who publishes it to the person who's reading it. And they, from what I understand, keep pretty close records on their deeper secrets, because they're secrets. They're not public. But that's the reason I don't think there's as much out there as there should be about this man, because I feel like he is very unknown and very hidden, and I think that there's a lot more that we could learn just from his life. I mean, it was pretty fascinating just from his ties to the different lodges that he helped, and the creation of one that he helped create. But considering how long his reach was for his day, which was substantial, the Americas, even as far as Australia, not much else is known about this interesting and very learned man. Other than what I have talked about here, have you ever heard about this particular doctor and magician? And what is it that you've heard about him? As I said, I'm curious just because I've studied this type of stuff for quite a while, and there's not a lot out there about him. Now, Westcott, there's a little bit more, but he was more outgoing and more bombastic with how he lived life. Mather's contributions are what made him so powerful, but he really wasn't a public speaker. But then we have Woodman, who was pretty much the one who guided these two hotheads along, but we know next to nothing about him. And I looked metaphysical, I looked medical. This is what I could find. And I condensed it as, well, not really condensed, there wasn't a lot there. So this is what we've got for Dr. William Robert Woodman. My next Occult and Crochet group video will be on William Westcott. And after that one is done, I plan on doing, and I think I'll probably just upload a video for this one, depending on my time with day jobs. But I will do a video about the Golden Dawn specifically after I talk about him, because it kind of brings everything together, but also gives us a launching pad for the next set of people that I want to discuss. So, move that. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like on it, hit the subscribe button to be notified when I go live on YouTube or on Odyssey. At the moment, those are the only two platforms I'm on. I'm considering adding another one. I just haven't quite made that call yet. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or even constructive criticism, drop it in the comment section below. As long as we're respectful, that's all I ask for, and I think that's something we all could use some more of in this world. With that, I will let you go. Oh, before I bounce out of here, this is one of the only images I could find of Westcott, or of Woodman, as well, which also says something, that he has pretty much this picture. There was one other one, but it's only through one museum, and I didn't want to go there. But that's the gentleman, and I believe this is in his Freemason stuff. So, and some of his awards from different jobs that he had done. With that, I will let you guys go. Have a great rest of your day. If you are watching this on or around the 4th of July, which is, I'm dropping it on the 3rd, have a happy 4th, stay safe out there, and I will talk to you in a future video.